citizens! This is Duke Rubber the First, and I'm reacting to the Russian Revolution, Part 2 by OverSimplified. The last time we reacted to the Russian Revolution OverSimplified Part 1, yes. Also, it has captions, for example, but I need captions. Let's react to it. This is Russia before the Russian Revolution. But the Russian Revolution.
While Nicholas had been busy playing with his new best friend, tensions
oh
in
my
Europe
god,
had been
that's
rising.
horrible
It just
again.
so happened that in 1914,
Prince
Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary went for a drive with the top down in Sarajevo. One thing leads to another, and suddenly Russia found itself at war with half of Europe. A wave of patriotism swept through Russia. The capital was renamed Petrograd because St. Petersburg sounded a bit too German. Even revolutionaries were getting
the
on
word
board.
St.
To them,
Petersburg,
World War I was a big
please.
stinky imperialist war, but they didn't want their big stinky imperialist
Sounds
replaced by
too
a foreign one.
Soviets.
So pretty much everyone wanted Russia to win. I hope Russia loses.
You
Jeez,
anti-monarchist?
Lenin hoped Russia would lose because that would help him overthrow the Tsar. As long as he did that, who cares if Germany blows up half the country? And blow up half the country, they
Deutschland!
An inefficient Tsarist government meant there were shortages of just about everything you need to fight a war. And if losing a teensy-weensy war with Japan upset the people, losing a giant Wyatt war like this was much worse. Soldiers were deserting, the economy was imploding, and in no time, Russia was starving. The peasants were getting more peasanty, the workers were getting more workery, all the while Germany was getting more Germanery. Dmitri,
oh my god, Germany!
Someone with a great military
oh my
mind
god,
to step in and take control.
The revolution happened already?
General Hickenlooper. How about me? You can't.
Hi, General Hindenburg, he's German!
While you're gone. Obviously, my German wife and a homeless wizard.
Oh my god, his German wife.
Declared himself commander-in-chief and went to the front lines, leaving his German wife in charge
oh my god.
The Germans. It wasn't a good look. And because Alexander was so close to Rasputin, people believed that he was actually calling the shots and secretly destroying Russia. And maybe even boinking her. And even worse.
That's fruity.
At this point, a bunch of nobles just couldn't take it anymore. Rasputin is destroying the country. We have to break his magic spell over the Tsar. But how? He's magic.
What? Big sexy party? Dude, that's so sketchy.
Very cool. Hey, it's Rasputin. The sexy party is running a little late, but in the meantime, why don't you try one of these totally not poisoned cakes? Dude,
that's a bean.
Why'd you say it like that? He's totally gonna know they're poisoned now. Shut up. I said they're not poisoned.
You're fatty. 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 Look at you. He's not fat. Oh,
I told you he was the Antichrist and you didn't
this is why you need religion. Any type of religion, except satanic things.
Sure he's dead? I don't know, but I'm supposed to be hosting a charity auction right now. Can we get this over?
I have a man tied up in a car, but is in the episode called Brom.
Okay, now he's dead.
Wizard 101.
Just like his life, is shrouded in mystery and speculation. He probably didn't really die like that, but he also probably didn't really heal people. He probably didn't influence the Tsar as much as people thought. He probably wasn't secretly destroying the country. But what he definitely did do, even in his death, was ruin the Tsar's reputation. Russia's autocracy looked more outdated than ever, and the Russian people were taking notice. Come on, men. Remember what we're fighting for.
No, this looks modern.
Yeah,
no, oh my god.
World War I left Russia broke, hungry, and exhausted. And with Nicholas acting as commander-in-chief, he was getting even more blame. For the second time, Russia was on the brink of revolution. By 1917, Russia had been fighting a war it couldn't afford for 3 years. They were running out of many things, most worryingly, food. On
because everybody was fat.
Thousands of hungry women
stop with the fat joke, even it was from the yesterday's episode of Call of Duty.
But men too. So the next day they joined in as well. Gatherings on the streets were forbidden, but I'm not sure how you'd arrest 250,000 people.
Well, just shoot them!
An end to the war, and
this will be fun.
And even an end to the Tsar's autocracy. Now, normally the troops would deal with this kind of thing, but as it turns out, soldiers get hungry too, and they were also tired of having to kill their fellow Russians so much. So entire regiments mutinied in the capital, and they joined the crowd as well, trashing symbols of the Tsar and his autocratic regime. Things were escalating very quickly. Liberal politicians watching the riots in the streets had long been dissatisfied with the Tsar, since he would shut their parliament down anytime they did something he didn't like. They believed the only way to bring stability back to the streets was for Nicholas II to abdicate.
They even caused more chaos.
Police fired on soldiers. Soldiers fired on soldiers. The workers re-established the Petrograd Soviet. Politicians began arresting the Tsar's ministers.
No.
He may have been an autocrat, but he just lost complete control of his capital city. Talk about embarrassing. Nicholas, the troops have turned against us. The people have taken over the city. They've even cut my phone line. Hello? Hello?
It's just a banana,
Phones
not
are
a
down.
phone.
Things must be
Ring,
bad.
ring, ring,
I
ring,
better get
banana phone.
Nicholas hopped on the next train back to
Ding
Petrograd,
dong, ding
but he
dong,
never
ding
made
dong.
it to the city. His
Banana
train was met by
phone.
military
Oh, there's the
generals and other
man in the train.
politicians. What's going on? Nicholas,
What?
look, man, we need to talk. It's not
Okay.
you, it's us. Who am I kidding? No, it's definitely you. During the whole crisis in Petrograd, the liberals convinced the generals that if Nicholas abdicated, the people would calm down, and the generals were on board. They didn't have time to quell the chaos,
Oh my
because
God.
don't forget, they were still losing a global, all-encompassing war
I know
against
that.
the Germans. And with the military no longer on his side, Nicholas had no choice but to step down. Throughout his entire reign, he had done everything he could to keep all the power for himself. And in the end, that's exactly what left him with none. But then there was a
Advertisements. No, stop with this cock.
But then there was a big question.
We
Who
don't
replaced
hate
Nicholas?
French animals.
His son Alexei was next in line. Hey buddy, Daddy couldn't handle the complex socioeconomic problems of a giant multinational, multi-ethnic empire that's engaged in total war with all of Europe. You think you could give it a shot?
Oh,
Alexei
novice.
wasn't ready to be Tsar. Nicholas did have a brother, but given the state of the empire, he
What
wasn't
about
keen on it.
give
And
the
so,
throne to the
300
whole
years of Roman
Solon?
rule in Russia
They will keep the
just
Russian
kind of
Empire
came to
alive.
an end. The earlier 1905 revolution hadn't changed much, but this new revolution had left Russia without a Tsar. And still, before the year was over, there would be one more revolution
One
left
more?
to come.
Oh my
Nicholas's failure as commander of the armed forces was the final straw that broke the camel's back. Do you think maybe you could have done any better? Well, guess what? It's time to find out. In Rise of Kingdoms. Rise
I
of
don't want
Kingdoms
to see
is
the
a
Rise of
massive
Kingdoms
multiplayer,
video
free-to-play,
games.
real-time strategy game. Choose from 11
Please.
online players and guide your civilization from a lowly clan into
No.
a great empire.
Who needs Rise of Kingdoms?
Now, where was I? Oh yeah.
I can
Hungary
War
1,
Conquer
Absolute
and European
Chaos,
War.
and the end of the Tsar. Oh, hey guys. Says here there's been a
3,
revolution, and the reign of the Tsars
4,
has ended.
5,
Oh,
6.
come on! I missed another one? Why am I even in this video? Well, it's not like you could have done anything. As long as there's a world war, you can't get back to Russia. Who wants to start a revolution?
This is
Despite
me.
getting rid of Nick, Russia was still at war with half of Europe. The Germans, however, had an idea.
What?
They thought that if they helped Lenin get back,
Why
it would
not
cause
send a
trouble
whole
for the new Russian
Solon
government. So they put him
to
on a train.
Russia?
Destination, Petrograd. It was a long journey, and while Lenin was cooped up in his train, things in Russia were changing. Workers were taking control of their factories.
Oh my God,
Soldiers
that's
were socking
slavery.
into their mean old
That's
officers. Without a Tsar, a
abuse.
big old power vacuum had opened up.
That's
Someone had to
kidnapping.
fill it. The liberals proposed they be in charge, and they set up
Duma.
a provisional government. The workers
Oh
however,
my
were working on
God.
establishing local Soviets, largely controlled by the
Not the
Social
Petrograd
Revolutionaries and the
Soviets.
Mensheviks. And since neither felt like they
Those
had the power to
are
oust the other, Russia
rebels
ended
as
up in a
well.
classic dual power conundrum. The two coexisted, with the provisional government becoming the official
They have a
government, and the
symbol
elected
of...
Soviets issuing orders to the workers and
Offside
soldiers.
didn't say that,
This power
sorry.
balance was delicate, and all it would take was one bold revolutionary to come along and give
This
everyone
guy
a
was
big break.
sketchy.
Oh boy, Lenin's coming home. I can't wait for him to see all the great things we've accomplished. And I'm gonna show him my fan art. Oh look!
Washington
there he
was
is now.
nice until this happens.
Shut up! Shut up! You all suck! The provisional government sucks, the Soviet sucks, even your fan art sucks!
Do the revolution of Washington, not Lenin.
Why does he have to be so mean? In case you couldn't tell, Lenin wasn't a fan of everything that had been happening. In his April
Because
theses,
he's
he
not
called the provisional
Washington.
government and the Soviets at
We have a
first big
German
bourgeois
unit
process.
group called
And he
George
kinda had a point.
Washington
There was
League,
still a lot
and
for the
there's a
Russian people
German
to be
American
mad
group
about.
during
The
World War
provisional
II.
government
But
hadn't got
it was
Russia out of the war.
fantasy.
The people were still hungry, and the peasants were
And it
still
wasn't made
hoping
by
to
me,
get
it was made by
more land.
someone else.
Meanwhile, the Soviets hadn't done much to change things either. But even though they weren't perfect, a lot of people did like what the new government had been doing. There was progress. The secret police were disbanded, the death penalty abolished. They
Keep
even
the death
planned to hold
penalty!
elections, meaning for the first time ever, the Russian people could choose their own government. To many, Lenin seemed like some out-of-touch weirdo. If Lenin wanted to go from whiny irrelevant zero to hunky communist hero, he'd need to shake things up a bit. So he and the Bolsheviks came up with a hot new slogan that promised to give the people what the provisional government wouldn't. Peace. Don't like war? We'll end it. Land. You want land? We'll give it to you. Bread. Hungry? Scooby-Dooby-Doo.
That is
Lenin
so
also gave
liberal!
power to the Soviets,
Scooby
which meant
Doo is a
getting rid of the
liberal
provisional government and
cartoon.
having the Soviets
Now you
run the
make this
place.
even
A
more
communist
liberal.
dream. The people liked these
Oh
slogans, and bit
no.
by bit, the Bolsheviks became more popular. Some Mensheviks even began switching sides. But even though the people thought Lenin's slogans rocked, as long as the provisional government didn't mess up, they'd continue to support it. So let's check in on the provisional government. Oh, provisional government, you've made a big mess. The provisional government lasted for just 9 months, but those 9 months were chaos. The people wanted Russia out of World War I, but Minister of War Alexander Kerensky thought instead of doing that, why not do the exact opposite? If the people saw more Russian victories, they'd have to support the new government, and that went just about as well as you might expect. These heavy defeats worsened the Russian economy and made the hungry people hungrier. And by now, I think you know what comes next. They trashed the place. More looting, more rioting, more violence. It was like the Tsar had never abdicated. Tens of thousands of armed workers took to the streets during some of the worst violence Petrograd had seen yet. And in response, Kerensky called in the troops, who opened fire on the demonstrators. For now, Lenin and other Bolshevik leaders wanted to distance themselves from the violence, but the crowds marched under Bolshevik slogans, and as a result, Kerensky, now the Prime Minister, took the opportunity to stamp down on the Bolsheviks.
Mr. Prime Minister!
Being a German agent, and he was forced to flee to Finland in disguise. This sucks! Now I'll never get to have my revolution. Why are you wearing a dress? It's a disguise, idiot! And it makes me feel pretty. Kerensky had successfully dealt with the violence, but he just couldn't catch a break. This increasing support for more extreme forms of socialism, along with the poor handling of the war, alarmed traditional liberals and bougie business boys. To appease them, Kerensky decided to promote a military legend to Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, someone who hated the revolution, loved the death penalty, and was devoutly anti-socialist, General Kornilov. Hey man, thanks for the promotion.
Yes, Kornilov.
Of course, with you by my side, who would dare try to overthrow me? How about me?
To become the Tsar and stop the score.
Kornilov hated the liberal and socialist reforms of the new government,
he was
particularly the dumb socialist soldiers' committees. The army was no place for undisciplined left-wing snowflakes. Fearing a Bolshevik takeover was imminent, Kornilov ordered his men towards Petrograd to oust the Soviet and take over. Kerensky freaked out, and he needed help. Since he knew Trotsky was finger-licking good at organizing, he and other Bolshevik leaders were released.
Don't release these people!
The Soviet organized the defense of Petrograd. Kornilov had the power of soldiers, but the Soviet had the power of workers. And they did what workers do best. Railroad workers diverted Kornilov's men away. Telegraph workers messed with his communications. They even infiltrated his forces and encouraged the demoralized men to desert. They were also armed en masse, but in the end, no fighting was necessary because Kornilov's coup just fell apart, and Kornilov was sent straight to prison. Everything was coming up Kerensky. Hey, thanks for the help.
He's a new Tsar.
Now that there's no longer any threat, how about you, return all those guns I gave you? No. Oh, no.
No, not again. Please, please. I don't want to see a biker at a COVID-19 patient.
Kerensky had just given a gun to a bear, a Bolshevik bear. The whole affair was a huge propaganda win for them. They had defended the revolution, and their popularity skyrocketed. They found themselves elected to the Petrograd and Moscow Soviets, with Trotsky becoming chairman in Petrograd. They were now in a very powerful position, almost powerful enough for Lenin to return home from Finland and finally stage his long-awaited communist revolution. The Bolsheviks began planning their takeover of the Russian government. Some got cold feet and began arguing against Lenin's armed revolution in favor of a more peaceful approach, and they even wrote newspaper articles about it, which kind of gave the whole scheme away. The Bolsheviks are planning an armed revolution? I did not see this coming. Kerensky began arresting Bolsheviks, and as a result, Lenin and the boys felt they had no choice but to commence the revolution right now. Lenin was back in Petrograd, but was still in hiding, so Trotsky got the ball rolling, using his position as Soviet chairman to organize the Bolshevik militias. Now, if you were to ask Soviet artists, the revolution went something like this.
Screw this revolution!
As much as they would like you to think it was a glorious, violent, heroic takeover, the truth seems to be a little more underwhelming. The Bolsheviks just kind of walked into key buildings in the city and took control. Bolshevik supporting sailors even brought in a huge battleship, but there wasn't really any fighting. Nobody really tried to stop them. In just one day, they took control of the city.
Stop them, please!
Kerensky just managed to escape before the Bolsheviks surrounded the Winter Palace, placing the provisional government under siege inside.
Oh
Is it safe to come out
no.
yet? I think so. Fear my revolutionary might.
Really?
Give me that. That night, Lenin came out of hiding to play a bigger role in the revolution. With him back at the helm, they had one more job to do: storm the Winter Palace and arrest the provisional government. And here comes the final showdown. The palace was defended by a force known as the Battalion of Death,
Yes.
who immediately gave up.
Why
Just
did
like
you do that?
Lenin had won. As far as violent, bloody revolutionary uprisings go, this wasn't really one of them. But
No!
Lenin was finally in charge of Russia. He had spent his whole life dreaming of this moment. He set up the first Council of People's Commissars, his own cabinet, with him in charge. This was it, his chance to finally make his communist utopia, with equality and freedoms beyond compare. Hey Lenin,
Called
before we took power,
Braskin.
they were planning on holding elections. Shall we go ahead with those? Of course. You can't have a communist utopia without high levels of political participation. The proletariat should be free to elect who it. What? The social revolutionaries won. We lost. Those don't count. Lenin claimed the elections were unfair, and the Constituent Assembly they created was counter-revolutionary. He presented the new assembly with a motion that basically said, sign here and give up your power. And when the assembly was like, no, Lenin said, see, they're disobeying me. Proof they're counter-revolutionary. Shut it down, boys.
What?
Moderate socialists and others weren't happy when Lenin had the assembly closed by force, and when campaigners began taking to the streets, they were fired upon. For Lenin, setting up a communist utopia was looking suspiciously like setting up a dictatorship. While he was implementing many of the communist policies you'd expect, he was also refusing to work with other political parties and cracking down on opposition. Hey Lenin, are you setting up a dictatorship? I'll shoot you if you are. Of course not. What a crazy theory. Anyway, I'm pleased to announce I'm setting up a secret police force to repress and kill traitors. And by traitors, I of course mean anyone not loyal to me. Owie, 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 owie. The assassination attempt made on Lenin's life in August 1918 failed. But in response, the Bolsheviks ramped up their oppression. But while all of this chaos was erupting back home, Lenin and the boys were also distracted by another problem. They were still at war with the Germans.
No more advertisements, please! Can you stop with the advertisements?
So Lenin made Trotsky Commissar for Foreign Affairs and sent him off to negotiate a peace deal with the Germans. The Germans offered Trotsky really harsh terms, you know, because they were winning the war.
Maybe we can give
a ton of land, something that would be devastating
Petrograd.
to the Look, I know it's not great.
And then another whole sword, and then the Russian Empire will be crazy.
Hey Trotsky, you got a big brain. What do you think? How about no war, no peace? What's that, Mr. Trotsky, sir? It's simple. No war means we'll stop fighting the Germans, but no peace means we won't sign the peace treaty either. Then, when the Germans say we've just stopped fighting, they'll have to leave us alone or something. Trotsky, that's genius! I could kiss you. Do you want me to kiss you? Stop asking me that. Trotsky's no war, no peace plan was a huge success.
For the German Empire!
Exactly as you'd imagine.
Glory!
When the Germans saw the Russians had stopped fighting, they slammed 700,000 troops deep into Russian territory with no resistance.
Yes,
now,
the
new peace treaty offered by the Germans was way worse, with Russia losing a huge amount of territory, population, and resources.
What about
the Bolsheviks had no choice but to accept, and Russia was humiliated. With Petrograd now in an exposed position, Lenin moved the capital to Moscow, just in case. Things really weren't going well for Lenin, and many people were extremely unhappy with the Bolshevik government and its actions. Lenin, you've pissed off so many people that they united against you. We're under attack. Relax, we always expected some counter-revolutionary pushback. I think we can handle a few angry monopoly men. But Lenin, it's not just the monopoly men. Okay, who are we up against? Well, the liberals, the social revolutionaries, national separatists in Poland, Finland, and the Ukraine, independent warlords setting up chiefdoms, anarchist rebels, the Green Peasant Armies, the Cossacks, the Caucasian states, the Baltic states, the British, the French, the Americans, and the Japanese. Oh, and a legion of Czechoslovakian soldiers seem to have taken over the Trans-Siberian Railway and stolen all the imperial gold reserves.
What about Freikorps?
Oh, and it says here your mother-in-law is coming to stay. No! A variety of anti-Bolshevik forces had united together to topple Lenin's government, and Russia descended into a full-blown civil war. Now, the Russian Civil War was extremely intricate and would really need its own video, but essentially, the anti-Bolshevik white movement gained control of vast, underdeveloped areas, while the Bolshevik Reds controlled the heartland. Using this to their advantage, along with the surprising military genius of Trotsky and the shocking disorganization of the White Army, the fortified Red Army gradually came out on top. It was an absolute conflict, with both sides committing horrendous atrocities. To maintain order at home, the Bolsheviks began the Red Terror, and the secret police would execute tens of thousands of suspected traitors. No one was safe from the violence, not even Nicholas himself. You've probably been wondering what Nicholas has been up to this whole time. Well, after his abdication, he and his family were placed under house arrest. At first, they were allowed to live in their usual luxury, but after Lenin took over, their conditions worsened. The Bolsheviks were just holding on to Nick until they could work out what to do with him, but the Civil War complicated things. The last thing they wanted was for Nick to be freed by the White Armies, and so, to stop this from happening,
White Armies!
Nicholas's Bolshevik guards decided to act.
Occupying
It's
his
not
word.
entirely certain whether Lenin ordered it, or if the guards were acting on their own volition.
No.
But on July 17th, 1918, with White Armies approaching,
No.
they woke Nicholas and his family in the middle of the night and brought them into the basement. There, a drunken squad of Bolsheviks murdered the entire family. Nicholas, the last Tsar, once one of the most powerful men alive, had met a brutal end. But after years of fighting and millions of deaths, Trotsky and his Red Army came out victorious. Wow, that was a close one. Okay, back to creating a communist utopia. How are we doing on that? Well, the Civil War helped create a massive famine and about 5 million people starved to death. There's massive inflation and the ruble is worthless. Hundreds and hundreds of kilometers of railway track have been destroyed. Disease and epidemics have killed 3 million. The population of Moscow and Petrograd has collapsed. Life expectancy has plummeted. Sailors in Kronstadt are rebelling. People are freezing.
Yeah, whatever you
and
forgot
life
the
has been reduced
context
to a constant search for food and shelter. Whoa. Well, this just means I'll have to work twice as hard, day and night, to save the country. Nothing will stop me, short of a couple sudden strokes. Get the doctor. One thing you have to keep in mind is that everything I've been talking about, the Civil War, the assassination attempt, and Lenin's struggle to maintain control at home, were all happening around the same time.
Yeah.
It must have been extremely stressful. Lenin began getting headaches, insomnia, and in 1922, he suffered 2 separate strokes. As the Soviet Union was officially declared under a strict one-party system, Lenin's health continued to decline, and his ability to control his party went with it. Everybody assumed Trotsky would succeed him. He was a great speaker, he'd won the Civil War, and he had a dope-ass train. The last person anyone expected to take over was Stalin. Stalin wasn't the greatest
Oh no, not that communist
like Trotsky. He was,
who
as one mentioned,
defeated
described him,
Germany.
a great blur. Someone who operated in the background. Someone who you might not even
Oh
notice.
my
But it was
god.
in the background that Stalin would rise
Oh
to
my
power.
god.
Here's how it happened. After the revolution, all the Bolsheviks hoped to get a cool job in the new government. What did you get? Commissar for War. Sweet.
Sweet.
What'd you get? Secretary.
Oh my god.
Stalin was made general secretary for the Communist Party. It wasn't what he wanted, but Stalin quickly realized that even though it wasn't fancy, it was a powerful position. As secretary, he had the power to give people jobs within the party. So he would give jobs to all of his pals, who in turn would give him their support.
Wow.
The more pals he gave jobs, the more
There's
power
a
he
general
got. The more
secretary
power
of
he
the
got,
German
the more pals he got.
nation.
Lenin
Not
may have been having
including the
wall-to-wall
job.
strokes, but he was still involved in the party, and he was taking notice. He wasn't a fan of Stalin abusing his position, or insulting his wife to her face. Lenin knew he couldn't let Stalin take over, but by this stage, he was just too sick to fight it. Hey man, tell whoever's in charge of giving people jobs not to let that jerk Stalin become the next leader. By the way, who did I put in charge of giving people jobs? That would be Stalin, sir. Bleh. Whoa. Deja vu. Lenin's last wish was to not
Did
let
you
Stalin
vote?
take
I
over.
on the
By the time he
ball.
died, Stalin was too powerful to remove.
I'm not
He
talking
had his
much.
remaining opponents arrested or killed. Trotsky was banished and fled to Europe. Eventually, he would be assassinated.
No, he's fled to
by Soviet spies
Mexico.
in 1940. Our dear comrade Lenin has died. We should have a state funeral. No. Let's mummify him and put him on display so people can look at his dead body forever. That's gross. You're gross.
Yes.
Guards,
Oh my
kill
god.
him. Lenin had waited so long to take control in Russia, but he never got to see his communist utopia. His short time in charge was spent dealing with the destroyed Russian economy, World War I, and the Civil War. He was cruel and merciless, but he really did seem to believe communism would make Russia a better place. Stalin, on the other hand, would take the Soviet Union down a different path. If you thought Lenin was a tyrant, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, girl. A secret police state, a rapidly militarizing superpower, led by a paranoid man who deeply distrusted the West, would see the world come to the brink of nuclear annihilation. That's right, I'm talking about
The Cold War. Yes. The same war that has the Bay of Pig invasion with Alex Mason, who've been captured and sent to Vorkuta. In Call of Duty Black Ops. So thanks for watching. Please leave a like and a comment and subscribe to my channel. See this video? Links down below. See this TV ad? Links down below. See this TikTok? Links down below. See my Steam? Links down below. So thanks for watching and see you guys later. Bye.